Tonight, miracle on the Hudson. A jetliner filled with passengers crashes in the frigid waters off Manhattan, and everyone on board survives.
U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had just taken off from LaGuardia Airport in Queens for Charlotte, North Carolina, when it apparently hit a flock of birds, knocking out both of the plane's engines.
Cactus 1539 hit birds.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it. We're going to be nuts.
Even without power, though, the pilots managed to maneuver the Airbus A320 northward over the Bronx, make a sharp turn south, then follow the Hudson River alongside Manhattan Island, losing altitude along the way, and finally coming to rest on the river.
The plane then skimmed across the water 100 yards or more before coming to a rest just off Midtown Manhattan.
Many passengers didn't think they'd make it. One man turned his cell phone on so his body could be found through the phone's GPS. A woman left a message for her husband. Tell the kids I love them.
Joining me now is David Sanderson. He was one of the last passengers out of the plane. I understand you were actually in the plane after it landed for 7 minutes. Was it filling up with water?
Yeah, once we got everybody out, I stood in the plane to make sure everybody was out. And it was filling up pretty rapidly, and it got up to about waist level. And then when everybody was out in the lifeboats, I then stepped out on the edge there, and it was about knee deep at that point. And I just jumped in and started trying to swim to the first boat I could find.
Chesley B. Sullenberger III, a former fighter pilot, used 40 years of experience to somehow land the powerless plane on the icy waters of the Hudson River, a feat that's being called a miracle.
David, take me inside the plane. Take me inside as this plane impacts on the water. What was going on inside?
It was stone quiet in there, which was amazing to me, because I don't think anybody cross-referenced what was going on. And I think that was a saving grace. And I just want to say, I admire your skills, but I honor the way you managed your state. And now I do listen to the flight attendants every flight. Yes. I know exactly where everything is. Yes. I know exactly where the exits are. And I know where that life preserver is.
I'm really proud of a dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Dave Sanderson. Every one of us got a hero inside. Every one of us has a capacity in the most difficult times to find our strength. And it's nice to see a miracle on the Hudson and know that part of that miracle was an extraordinary pilot, and another part of that was a dear friend who, even when he could barely function, made sure other people's lives were being saved and supported.
Thank you very, very much. First, I want to thank Robbie and Todd for having me here. I have the opportunity to travel around the world and speak now, but my first speaking engagement was in a church. So any chance I have the opportunity to come back and be a part of the faith, be back in the church, I'd never pass up that opportunity. This all started for me in the church. And I want to thank John. John did a fabulous job. Let's give a round of applause to John. He did a fabulous job really getting this thing going tonight. I'm really honored at what he did. But what we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about what does it mean to fight the good fight? When all stuff's hitting the fan, when things are coming at you, what does it mean to fight the good fight of faith? We're going to talk about that about the next 50 minutes. Throughout our lives, many of us will be tested by traumatic life events. These midlife jolts can either propel us or they can derail us, taking us back to square one. These jolts can create a lifetime of purpose, create new relationships, new careers, new worldviews, and a clarity of your mission on earth. That jolt came to me on January 15th, 2009, when I survived the plane crash known as the Miracle on the Hudson. Over the next 50 minutes, I want to share with you how by being resourceful and employing your own personal leadership skills, not only you can be able to survive, but you can thrive. And you don't need a plane crash for God to reveal his purpose to you. Before we start, I want to ask a question. Anybody here seen that movie, Sully? Anybody seen the movie? A few of you, great, cool. Hey, Clint Eastwood did an amazing job, and wasn't Tom Hanks fabulous? He did an amazing, and I was just very honored to be a very small part of that experience. But one thing the passengers knew then, and we all know now, who've seen it know now, is this. That movie was not about the plane crash. It was about the amazing journey of the captain. And the captain and the crew did a fabulous job that day, and I will be forever grateful. But now, Let me take you inside a miracle. Let me tell you my story. January 15th, 2009 was a Thursday. That week started for me on Tuesday in Sarasota, Florida. On Wednesday, we went to a manufacturing plant in Petersburg, Virginia. When we got done, we went to Richmond, jumped on a train to go to New York, because the next day, we were going to work in the distribution center in Brooklyn, New York. Now, I don't know if anybody here has ever been or worked inside of a distribution center, but they normally open quite early in the morning. This one opened at 2 o'clock in the morning. So our day started about 5, and we got done about 10. Now, I travel over 100,000 miles a year in what I do in my job, so any chance to get home to my wife and my 4 kids a little early, I usually try to take advantage of that. So about 10 o'clock that morning, I called our travel agent to work with her, and she put me on flight 1549. I gave up a first-class seat at 5 o'clock for seat 15A to be on 1549. That moment, that decision, changed the entire direction of my life. But I was grateful. I was going home. I was going to see my family. Now, that day was 11 degrees and snowing. So when I got to the airport, the planes were backed up, but that's no big deal in New York, right? I mean, things happen like that all the time. So I was one of the first set of passengers to board the plane that day because of my status with U.S. Airways. I was a chairman. I was top tier. So I went back to my seat. I went to seat 15A. That's 4 rows behind that left wing. And I did exactly what I did every single time when I got on a plane then. And I hallucinate what you do when you get on a plane now. I went back to my seat. I put my briefcase down. I put my wallet in the briefcase, pulled the magazine out, and I started to read. I did not listen to the flight crew. I did not know where those exits were. I did not read that little brochure they always tell you to read. But I guarantee you, every single time I get on a plane now, I do. Because now I know how important it is to be aware on a plane. I don't know if anybody here's ever flown out of LaGuardia, but if you haven't, you basically go out over the bay. It's a runway that goes out in the bay, and all of a sudden you start turning north. And about 60 seconds after we took off, is when I heard an explosion. It was a loud explosion. Man, I had never heard anything on a plane like that before, so it got my attention. So I looked up, and I looked out the window, and I saw fire coming out from beneath the left wing. So I knew something had happened. By a flash of light, I thought plane lost an engine. No big deal. It really didn't startle me too much. But see, that's where I think God's grace entered for the first moment on this flight. Because no one on the plane knew at that moment in time what happened on the left side of the plane also happened on the right side of the plane. And I truly believe I able to cross-reference or checked in and say, hey, man, what did you see? Hey, man, what did you hear? There could have been a lot of panic. People panic, people lose their heads. And when people start to lose their heads, they start making irrational decisions. But this day, 10 years later, the one thing that stays with me, and I bet if you talk to any passenger on that plane, they'll tell you the same thing. It was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. The guy next to me elbowed me and said, hey, man, what's going on? I said, I think we're going back to the airport. I felt him banking. I thought I was going back to the airport. But as we were banking, all of a sudden I looked out the window and I saw something I had never, ever seen before. I saw the skyline of Manhattan up close and personal. I looked out the window a little further, and all of a sudden I see this bridge coming up. And all of a sudden, as we're approaching the bridge, is when I heard the only thing I heard the entire time on this plane, when the captain said, this is your captain, brace for impact. Now, I never heard that one on a plane before, so that one got my attention. So at that point in time, all of a sudden, I did 2 things. First thing I did is I prayed. I prayed, whoever that dude is up front, man, just get me down in one piece. Just get me down in one piece. Second thing I prayed for is the last person I spoke with, who was my client in Brooklyn, to call my wife and tell her that I loved her. And the third thing is I prayed to God to forgive my sins. I don't want anything between me and God at this point. We're going down, I want to go up, and it ain't looking good for me right now. And the second thing I did is I reached down in my briefcase and got my wallet out and shoved it down into my pants. Because if something did happen, which looked like it was probably going to happen, at least they could claim my body. At least my family would know who I was. Now, I don't know if anybody here knows anything about the George Washington Bridge. That bridge is roughly 600 feet up. The plane at that point in time was roughly 1,000 feet and descending. So we were only clearing the bridge by roughly 400 feet. And as we were clearing the bridge, I looked out the window and you could see people's faces looking up at you. That's how close we were to that bridge. And it was about 60 seconds after we crossed over the bridge is when we crashed into the river. And people ask me all the time, says, what was that like? What was that moment like? I was telling them, well, some people were calling people. Some people were texting people. What happened to me is this. That last moment, I saw the movie of my life pass before my eyes. I saw things, guys, with such clarity I had not seen. It was like 4K. I had not seen it. When I played Little League Baseball, when I went to high school and my first date, and when I got married and my kids, I saw things in my life with such clarity. I was thinking, this is my life. It's like that show in the 50s, This Is Your Life. I saw my life play out before my eyes. It's a surreal experience. If you've never been there, it's a surreal experience. And like I mentioned, about 60 seconds after we crossed over the bridge when we crashed into the river. And it was a hard hit. When we hit, I went all the way back to my seat and all the way up my seat, and just like that. But when I came back up, I looked up, and I looked out the window, and I saw light. So I knew I had a shot, but I wasn't out yet. Because if you saw the plane landed, water started coming in immediately. And depending where you were on that plane, I was towards the back of the plane. Water was anywhere from ankle, knee to waist deep, just like that. And I looked out the window one more time. All of a sudden, I saw the water was already halfway up the window. This thing's going down. Now, you've probably seen that picture, if you saw anything about this, of the plane in the river, right, with the people standing on the wings. And people ask me all the time, how those people get out there so quickly. I'm going to tell you what happened. When I looked out, one of the first things I saw is this. People getting on top of the seats to walk down the seats. That's how a lot of people got out of the plane. And that became a great lesson in my life, a great metaphor in my life. Because when you think you may only have one way to get something done in life, all of a sudden if you're resourceful and you open your eyes and you pray to God, multiple resources open up in your life. And people were walking down the seats. But I didn't think about getting on top of a seat. My first thought was get to the aisle, get up, and get out. When I got to the aisle, something happened. It only changed that day for me, but changed the entire direction of my life. That moment mattered. I heard my mom talking to me in my head. My mom passed away in 1997. There's something she would tell me when I was a child that popped into my head, and it was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And the right thing for me was, you take care of other people first. See, I grew up at a small town outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I ran with a group of guys playing sports and athletics and Boy Scouts. We always ran together, and we always had each other's backs. We always had each other's backs. So at that moment, I made a decision. I'm going to the back of the plane, see if anybody needed help. So I started climbing over the seats to get to the back of the plane and got behind everybody to start making my way out and checking things out. Now, in the back of the plane, water from anywhere from waist to chest level deep. And based on the impact, some of those bins have now popped open and that luggage is flown out, and you're anywhere from waist to chest level deep, and you've got luggage floating in the water, and you're trying to get out of a plane. It's sinking. And the first light that I saw was on the right side of the plane, 10F. And I started getting out just like everybody else. But when I got to that window, it was an amazing sight. There was no room on that wing for me. There was no room on that boat for me. But it was an amazing sight. People were already being rescued. I don't know who said this, and I give them 100% of the credit when they said that the crew got everybody down that day, the crew and passengers got everybody out that day, but the real heroes of the day were the first responders. And the first of the first responders was the New York waterways, that ferries. The ferries there were about 2 minutes after this plane crashed. And there's a lot of ways to define what a miracle is, guys. But having someone there to rescue you, just a couple minutes after a plane crash in ice cold water, that's the start of a miracle. Now, this picture tells you a lot of what happened that day. This picture is a great picture, but it tells you a lot of what happened. One of the things you see in this picture is this. You do not see the crew. All the crew went out to the left side of the plane. So the right side of the plane was managed and led by passengers who had zero technical experience, who had no training at all. And that became a great lesson in my life. Because one thing that I learned at that moment in time is this. You don't need to know everything about something to lead, because people lead people. People don't lead projects. People lead people. So if you step up in your personal leadership and you start leading, you don't need to know everything about everything. The second thing you see in this picture is this. You'll notice I'm holding on to the lifeboat. And the reason why is this. I don't know anybody here knows anything about the Hudson River. I learned a lot about it over the last several years. It's got an extremely fast current. This plane actually floated down the river about a half a mile in 24 minutes. And as that plane was floating down the river, that little lifeboat was floating out into the river. And they, like and I would say probably you if you were on that plane, who reads the instructions? No one reads the instructions. It's actually tethered to the plane, but no one knew that. So they kept yelling at me to hold on, hold on, hold on, and that's why you see me holding on. This little lifeboat, waist deep in 36-degree water for about 7 minutes. And also I looked out the wing and something happened to catch my eye. And there was a lady, and she was standing there and she wasn't moving. She was stifled. Now, you've probably been in meetings and business meetings or in situations where you get somebody, or maybe even you sometime, would you get locked? You don't know what to do. You go in that trance, right? I don't know what to do. If I do anything, I can hurt. I'm not going to do anything. That's a dangerous position to be in. So I've had a lot of training in how to do this. And how you do this, break somebody out of that trance, is you have to do something radical to break them out of it. You have to do something really radical. So I started yelling at this lady, just started yelling at her. And she looked at me like, who is this old man yelling at me? But all of a sudden I got her attention. And there was a lady on that lifeboat, got her hand, put her on that lifeboat, and all of a sudden, you see people walking on a wing. You've probably heard the term the wing walkers. That's how it happened. People started walking down the wing. Things were happening. Well, all of a sudden, a couple minutes later, I felt something happen. I felt a shift in the plane. And I didn't know what happened then, but I found out what happened later. What happened was there was a tugboat that was part of the rescue. And as he was backing out because other boats were coming in, he hit the front of the plane. Now, that's not that big of a deal unless you're in the plane. And I was in the plane. We're 6-7 minutes into this thing. I'm waist deep plus in the water. And when he hit that plane, it shook the plane. When it shook the plane, I felt water go up my back. And the first thing that I thought came to my mind said, Titanic. I remember that movie. When that boat tipped up, it sucked everything down in it. And the first thought I had is, do not be sucked down in a plane. Man, you're almost out of here. Do not be sucked down in a plane. So I always stop here, I thank my mom and my dad. Because they didn't give me swimming lessons when I was a child, I may never been able to get off this plane. And I started thinking about that moment a few years ago, and it reminded me of a moment when I was 12 years old. Anybody here ever been in Boy Scouts? Anybody in Boy Scouts? Love Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout. And I was going for this thing in Boy Scouts. They have this thing called the Order of the Arrow Award. Anybody been in Order of the Arrow? Know what I'm talking about? It's basically when your dad drops you off when you're 12 years old, so I'll see you in a couple days. It's like Survivor on steroids, all right? It's like you have to do all these activities, and they give you this log, this big, and you have to whittle it down to a shape of an arrow at the end of this so you can present it to be a member. So we were doing all these activities, and one of the activities we had to do is this. We had to get across a river to get to the next activity. Now, yes, you could walk. They had a bridge. You could walk down the bank, cross the bridge, but, man, we're 12 years old. We jump in the river and start swimming across the river. I thought, was that the moment when I was 12 years old was going to give me the certainty to do what I was about to do? Because when I felt that plane shift, I'm like, I am out of here. So I jumped in and started swimming to the closest boat that I could find. That was the longest 10-yard swim in my life. Because not only was the water 36 degrees, but one thing everybody forgets, now there's jet fuel in the water. Now, when I got back to Charlotte and I went to the optometrist and they did the exam, my eye was a little hazy, so I went to see him. And he looked in and did the exam, and they found black spots in my eye. And we think that's jet fuel that got stuck in my eye from swimming. That's why today, folks, you see me wearing glasses. Because we think we got jet fuel in the eye from that swimming. But I got there. It got to the end of the wing. Now, the ferry I went to, you see that one right there, it's got a metal ladder. That's not the kind of ferry I went to. If you saw the movie, they had one of the ferries that had the plastic ladder they roll down. See, they don't have elevators to take you out of the water. They don't get paid to rescue people. They get paid to take people back and forth from Jersey to New York. They don't get paid to rescue people. Mine had a plastic ladder. So I got up to the back, so my backside close up, and they're yelling, climb, climb, climb. And I yelled up, can't. And then my mom started talking to me again. Because the word my mom hated most in life was the word can't. If you grew up in our house and you said, I can't to my mom, she looked at you and said, if you can't do it, you're going to do it. I figured out after my mom passed away that her whole worldview, her whole life was, if you can't, you must. So I got one arm up, I felt somebody grab it. Other arm up, I felt somebody grab it. To this day, I do not know who these two gentlemen are, but they pulled me on one of those ferries. threw me over the side. Now I'm sliding on the ice in the ferry. I don't even know what's going on now. Now I'm yelling, get up, get up, get up. And I got to the side of the ferry. I'm like, man, I made it. But I didn't, because that was my moment. One of the groups I love speaking for the most are firefighters. Anybody here a firefighter? Love firefighters, guys. I love them. Because I just spend a lot of time with these guys. And when you see these pictures, right, you see these firefighters going into it. Man, they got it going, right? And the next thing you see of a firefighter or EMT, they're sitting on the curb, man. They have nothing left. They gave it all, man. They gave all their, that's what happened to me. I gave it all. I had nothing left. I can't explain how cold 36-degree water is for an extended amount of time. It's hard to explain, but I had nothing left. But it's amazing where God puts people in times of a crisis. Because there was a guy on this ferry. He had a gray suit on. He had his laptop over his back, but most importantly, he was dry. But what did he have? He had an iPhone. He walked right up to me, put this in my face, said, call your wife, call your wife. And I couldn't dial it, but I could get the number out. And if iOS 12 is working right now, you're going to hear what was said that day from the ferry while all this was going on.
It's your dad. I was in a plane crash.
That's all I could get out. This is your dad. I've been in a plane crash. Now, my wife's not home waiting for me to give her blow-by-blow of my day. She actually has a real life. She's taking our son to basketball practice while all this was going down. So my daughter, who was, in that year, she was a junior in high school, was the one who got that message, turned the TV on, saw this going on. She's the one who had to communicate to my family that I've been in a plane crash, but she knew nothing else. Now, anybody here not been in New York or New Jersey? Anybody? Few people? Cool. I get to do a geography lesson. Love geography. This picture, like I said, tells you so much. So you look at this picture closely. In the middle of that picture, that's the Empire State Building in the middle of it. Those big buildings on the left up there, that's Manhattan. So if over there's New York, the other side of the river is Jersey. And 5 years ago, I had the high honor and privilege of speaking with one of the people who wrote the plan for maritime rescues in the Hudson. He and I did a conference down in New Orleans, a plan execution. Man, he told me it was a cool talk, 2-hour talk. I learned so much from him. But one of the things I learned was pretty basic. Wherever closest point to shore you were is where are you going to go? So you see how the plane's situated. The left side of the plane is facing towards Manhattan. The right side of the plane is facing towards Jersey. And I found out later they radioed ahead because they knew that I'd been in the water. So when we hit shore, there were 3 people waiting just for me. There were 2 EMTs and a guy from the American Red Cross with a blanket. And that's why I now speak internationally for the American Red Cross. Because a little known fact about that day is this, which you will not get in the media. This is bonus information. There were a lot of groups that touched a lot of people that day. But there were 2 groups that touched every one of us. Ferries, the waterways, and the Red Cross of both the New York and New Jersey side. And I'm honored and privileged tonight that the CEO of the Tennessee Red Cross is here with us tonight, celebrating this tonight to be part of the Man Up. His name's Joel Sullivan. I want to recognize him right now for what he does every day with the Red Cross. Thank you. I couldn't walk. So they picked me up and carried me to a triage center. Now, if you've never been to a triage center, it's a room with nothing in it. There ain't nothing special about a triage center. They put me next to the wall, stripped all my clothes off down to my skivvies, and Heather, my EMT, says, I'll be right back. So now I'm on the floor in my underwear. I don't even know what's going on now. I look over here, and this guy is sort of like I am. I look over here, and this girl didn't have any underwear on. But it's amazing when you're floor naked with 2 people. Everybody's looking, but ain't nobody talking. It's a very weird feeling. I was just in the water now. I'm naked with 2 people. What's going on now, right? And all of a sudden, I look up, and I see this guy walking towards me. He had a card in his hand. He came up and said, sir, I need your name. I need your date of birth. He writes on the card. He puts it around my right ankle. He walks away. Now, I don't know when y'all grew up. I grew up in the 70s. There's a TV show called MASH. When they take your toe, they're carding you out, man. It's game over. You didn't make it. You're going to the big casino in the sky, buddy. It is over. And that's exactly what I thought. I was on the floor. I was naked. I was ice cold. I could barely breathe. I had a tag in my foot. I must be dead. I said, it's a movie Ghost. The movie Ghost is true. I am watching myself die. I didn't make it. I'm just watching this thing play out. All of a sudden, Heather comes back and says, I got to take your blood pressure. I said, good blood pressure. We like blood pressure. Unfortunately, mine was 190 over 120. And she goes, you gotta go stat. And when you hear stat, you're going someplace. She goes, you gotta go stat. You could have a heart attack or stroke. You have to go right now. And the first thing I thought was, man, I survived a plane crash. I got out of the water. And now I'm gonna die of a heart attack or stroke. Man, it just keeps coming, man, right? All of a sudden now we're in fast motion. They put me on this gurney and wheel me out. And you gotta remember, this is New York, media capital of the world. At the busiest time, rush hour, there's people every place. I had never seen anything like this in my life. And they're trying to take me down to the ambulance. But there was a guy from NBC with his camera on his shoulder who had a story. Last passenger out, they had a story. He's following us. They're putting him in the ambulance, he's jumping in. They're pushing him out, he's jumping in. They're pushing him out. There's chaos in the ambulance. Man, I don't even know what's going on now. But they take me to this place a couple minutes away called Palisades Medical Center. And once again, people from New Jersey get a bad rap. Because one thing about people in New Jersey, they know how to respond. So when we roll in, they open these doors, there's like 20 or 30 people waiting just for me. And all of a sudden, these 10 women come running up with blankets. I didn't know why until I found out later. With all the commotion over at the triage center, the gurney got stuck. They couldn't get the gurney out. So these 10 women picked me up, carried me to this bed where there was a doctor, and now it is go time. Now the doctor's giving out orders. He goes, blood pressure, they take it again. 190 over 120. Knew that wasn't good because Heather said I could have a heart attack or stroke. That's not good. They yelled out oxygen. They yelled out 75. Man, I didn't know what that meant. I found out later, that's not good. They yelled out temperature. They took it orally, it was 96. Then he yelled out anally, and all of a sudden, I got that one. I know exactly what that means. When my mom said that, I know what's coming now. I have no control over it, right? And Nurse Bautista, who's on my right arm, she's my angel, guys. She stayed with me the entire night. She yells back at the doctor, I can't get him off. I can't get him off. Because what happened was my body was so cold and so wet, my underwear was stuck to my hips, like frozen to my hips. They couldn't get him off. So what does every nurse have? Scissors like this long, right? Clip, clip, rip. And all I got left in this whole world is my watch. Because my temperature was 94. That's how they diagnosed me with hypothermia. And it took them 5 hours to warm my body up. That's how cold my body was, 5 hours. But that was an amazing 5 hours. Not only did I get to meet the former governor of New Jersey, the head of Port Authority, New York State Police, New Jersey State Police, FBI, Homeland Security. They want to talk to me, and the gentleman was on my left. He was the first passenger out. If you saw the movie, the guy who jumped out, started swimming, he was the first passenger out. On impact, he fractured his sternum. But the reason they wanted to talk to us is this. Once again, this is a little-known fact, which you will not get in the media as bonus information. Out of 150 passengers, not crew, passengers, 21 of us went to the hospital. 18 went to New York City hospitals like Columbia, Beth Israel, those city hospitals. 3 of us went to Palisades over in Jersey. Out of those 21 people, 2 people stayed the night, Barry and I. 148 passengers walked home just a couple hours after a plane crash in ice cold water. And if you saw the movie, you kept hearing people say, I need a number, I need a number. It took them that long to get a number because everybody was going home. It was like 7 o'clock that night. If you go back and watch the statement, about 7 o'clock that night when the governor of New York came out, this is truly a miracle on the Hudson. How's God's name? Because they couldn't find everybody. But they could find us, and they had questions. And the reason they wanted to ask us questions is this, because they couldn't get to the crew. And the movie had it accurate. The crew was locked down at the Courtyard Marriott LaGuardia. Nobody got to the crew that night. They were locked down. So we were getting questions all night long. And one of the questions I got was, do you think this was a terrorist attack? You have planes going towards bridges, towards Manhattan. Somebody has to answer the question. And we were the only ones going to answer that question at that point. But all night long, I kept telling the doctor, I have no clothes. I have no clothes. And the doctor kept saying, well, why do you need clothes? You're in a hospital. See, I did not know you did not need clothes in a hospital. I wasn't obviously one thing. I thought you needed clothes. But what he didn't realize is this. Not only did all the authorities know where we were at, but all the media knew where we were at. And we read Good Morning America, the early show on Fox and Friends, and all I had to wear is my watch. So somebody from the Northern New Jersey chapter of the Red Cross went out and got some really ugly sweats for me to wear that next day. If you go back and watch the videos from that day, you'll see these sweats, but that told me something, guys. God provides. When you have nothing. See, I don't know if anybody in this room has ever had nothing. I'm talking you have no clothes, you have no money, you have no food, you have no friends, you have nothing. and somebody goes out and this gives you a stitch of clothing, God provides. Now, when something like this happens, I hope you never have to go through it, but if you do, just know this. Every airline's got their own emergency response team, just as the U.S. Airways. And each one of us got our own liaison, our own person. Mine was Doreen from Pittsburgh. Doreen came in about midnight that night, and she had one job. Anything that Dave wanted, take care of Dave. So all night long, there were people coming in. She's trying to get under control. It was chaotic at the hospital. They'll tell you that. And she finally called my wife about midnight because I didn't have a phone. I got to use Doreen's phone. I finally called my wife. So the next morning, when Barry and I go down and do these shows, she's making plans to get me back to Charlotte, where I live. So we get done with these shows, and we come back, and I'm like, listen, I said, I feel good now. Let's go. I want to go home now. She goes, listen, I don't want any more stress on you. I'm going to put you on the 12 o'clock flight home. I said, no, I want to go home now. She goes, no, you don't understand. I can't get you. I said, no, you don't understand. My wife and kids are at the airport. They're probably freaking out. I want to go home now. She goes, no, you don't understand. She said, you are in Weehawken, New Jersey. You're going out of LaGuardia. It's about 9 o'clock. That flight leaves at 10. I can't get you there. Well, I told you the night before everybody wanted to be my friend. They all left their car and said, call me if you need anything. I cashed in. I'm going to tell you right now who the most important person in New York is, the Director of Port Authority. Gave his card, I said, call him. He said he'd help me. She looked at me and said, you want me to call him? I said, call him. He said he'd help me. She said, I thought you were freaking out on me. Started melting down. She got all big-eyed, right? She walked out the door and called the Director of Port Authority. 6 minutes later, I had a police escort. They take me from Weehawken, New Jersey to LaGuardia in 16 minutes in a pimped-out Escalade, me and my hoodie. They'll tell you that is a miracle. Listen, if you ever have the chance to take a police escort through Manhattan, take it. Ain't nothing like it, right? Back on January 15th, I did the 10th anniversary up there for this year. It took me 2 hours to get across a bridge, right? You just can't get from New Jersey to New York. So we get there, right? It's pretty cool. I have to admit, it's pretty cool. We get there, I do one quick interview, but I just want to go home, right? So I go up, man. I had nothing to check. Let's go. But we all forgot one critical detail. Me too. I didn't have an ID. How am I going to get through TSA without an ID? Well, it worked once. Played the Homeland Security guy's card at TSA. I played it. The guy looks at me and says, sir, why do I want to call the Director of New Jersey Homeland Security? So he knows who I am. Please call him. And he did. And I got through TSA without an ID. TSA will tell you that's a miracle, right? Listen, you go over here to B&A and say, I don't have an ID. See what happens. Ain't nobody playing games right now, right? No one's playing games. So what they give me something that I had never got in my life, this thing called an entourage. You may have ever had an entourage? I never had one. It's like 20 people want to walk me down to the plane, right? That's cool, right? So I had like 20 people walking me down to the plane, and there's a little commotion out there, but they walked me right in and sat me down in first class. This is an upgrade, right? Doreen's over there talking to Beth, the flight attendant, and the captain and the first officer walk out. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, we deboarded the plane. I said, why? He goes, well, we want to talk to you. We have never talked to anybody who survived a plane crash. So we're having a one-on-one interview in first class about the day before. They were firing questions at me, but what he wasn't expecting is this. I had questions for him. Like, are you going to get me over this bridge? Are you going to get me home? And the captain looked at me and said, sir, I will get you home safely. What I'll do for you is this. When we hit 3,000 feet, and man, that was the first time I heard that. I didn't know the plane only got 3,000 feet. What I'll do is I'll ring the bell, and you and I will know where this happened yesterday. So you put me back in coach. I did not get first class. I got free potato chips, free Cokes. Beth, the flight attendant, did great care of me. She was my angel. She left the middle seat open. She was my angel. Left the middle seat open. I put the hoodie up like the Unabomber, and I lock it down. I says, get me out of here. And all of a sudden, we take off. I hear ding, ding, ding. And I was like, whoa. 3,000 feet isn't that high up. And that's the moment, guys, that everything started coming back to me. I started realizing what happened that day. It all started coming back. I said, wow, this really is a miracle. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever flown from LaGuardia to Charlotte. I used to do it all the time, so I knew the geography pretty well. It's about the Virginia state line, Greensboro, North Carolina. They basically put your stuff away call, right? You were getting ready to land call. So they make this call, and I haven't talked to anybody but Beth, the flight attendant. But the guy 2 seats over from me, it was up page 4 of Newsday. And what is on page 4 of Newsday? That is the picture right there. So he looks at this thing, he looks at me and says, hey, were you that guy on that plane? I'm like, what? So he turns and shows me this picture. I'm like, whoa, my picture's in the paper. He goes, you were that guy on that plane, right? He says, allowed us. Everybody gets up, looks at the freak show in the hoodie in the back, right? Who's the guy? Who's the guy? And now we're on Following Descent. The last time we were on Following Descent, it really didn't work out real well for me. People are like, get down. And Beth's running up, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, just get me off this plane last. Just get me off this plane last. So when we land, Beth runs up. Beth's a stud. No one gets by Beth. She's my protector. She's my angel. Everybody needs an angel, right? She's my angel. Just keep on moving, keep on moving, keep on moving. She takes me off the plane last, and yes, my family was there, and also U.S. Airways was there to do the meet and greet, but also the CEO of the Red Cross in North Carolina was there with my family. Folks, that was the most important thing that happened that entire 2-day period, because somebody was taking care of my family. Now, what happened was they told me, they were briefing me as we were walking. There's a lot of media there, right? There's media every place. So they put us in the U.S. Airways Club in Charlotte. It was a B concourse. I've never flown in Charlotte. It's a B concourse. And gave us the club, basically, until everything got sort of settled down. So we're going out. I don't know if you've ever flown out of Charlotte, but they have these escalators that go down to baggage claim. So I'm getting on these escalators, and all of a sudden, wall-to-wall media. My son, who then was in second grade, started freaking out. And fortunately for my wife and someone from U.S. Airways, they took them the back way to get them out. I give them, God bless them for doing that, because he was just he couldn't deal with it, right? He's second grade. He couldn't deal with it. So I had 2 of my daughters with me. And I'm going down the escalator, I do these interviews, but now I'm home. God provided. I've got gratitude. I survived and I'm home. But that's where my miracle turns into my mission. And I want to tell you now, how that miracle turns into a mission, and now, how do you fight the good fight? The Sunday after the plane crash, I went to my church. Now that Sunday, everybody wanted to talk to me, but there was one guy who really wanted to talk to me. He's in charge of men's breakfast. He came up to me and said, hey, Dave, will you speak at men's breakfast next Sunday? I said, no problem, man. 50 old guys eating pancakes? Got it. Walk in the park. I didn't know they invited half of Charlotte. 500-600 people show up and they run out pancakes. They have hungry, angry Methodists on my hands, all right? Listen, I might be all right for Presbyterians, Episcopalians, and Lutherans. You run out of food, right? But if you're a Methodist, you better have food. So now I have hungry, angry Methodists. I don't even know what's going on now. So our situation said we have a gym with a stage. That's how our church is set up. So I go up the stage, go behind the curtain like this right here. I said, God, give me something to say, man. Give me something now. Deliver. And he gave me something to say. And I said whatever I said that day. I don't even remember what I said, but obviously I did something. I get done speaking, and 2 men wanted to talk to me. One was from Bank of America. One was from Wachovia. They had people on the plane with me. That's cool. That's no big deal. But all of a sudden I look up and look in the back of the room. And I see this elderly lady locking me out, just watching me. She catches my eye. She starts making her way up over here, takes a hard left, comes up and interrupts this conversation and grabs my arm really tight, like jump, like, whoa. But she looked me in the eye and said something that only changed that day for me, but changed the entire direction of my life. That moment changed everything. She looked me in the eye and said, I was questioning if there really is a God. I don't believe in miracles, but you are physical evidence that there's a God, and he does miracles. Thank you. Thank you. She let my arm go, looked me in the eye one more time, walked away. I look at these 2 gentlemen. I've never seen in my life, guys, 2 men cry like this in my life. They're physically crying. They're bawling right here. My minister was in the back witnessing all this. I looked at him like, what happened? But all of a sudden it came to me a couple seconds later. What happened to me on January 15, 2009, it now impacted somebody. Before she goes to her great beyond, wherever that is, now believes there's a God who does miracles, because I am physical evidence. So when Robbie and Todd invited me to be here several months ago to be with you this tonight here in Hendersonville, there's no doubt that I was going to be with you here tonight, because I don't know who I'm going to impact. My wife has only asked for 2 things this entire time. First thing was, as I was in the parking lot waiting to pick up my daughter for basketball practice, she got a phone call. All right, we got a phone call, but she took the phone call from a guy named Rick Warren. You ever heard of Rick Warren? Got a call from Rick Warren's office. And she called me and said, hey, this guy named Rick Warren's office called and want to talk to you. So I get on the phone and start talking to Rick Warren's office. And then Rick gets on the phone. He said, I want to interview you. I said, I'm open to that, but on one condition. He said, what is that? I said, I want you to talk to my minister. He goes, why? I said, I do not want you to think this is a Saul to Paul. I want people to understand I've always believed that there's a God. I've always believed there's a Jesus. But this is a strong reference for my faith. So he interviewed my minister and me for this interview. And they put it in his book called The Purpose-Driven Connection. And they did this interview right here. It's called God's Hands Are on All of Us. This is the first magazine interview I ever did with Rick Warren. That's the first thing my wife asked me to do. You know, I was really proud to do this and get the opportunity to meet and be with Rick Warren. Amazing experience. Second thing my wife asked me is this. She got a phone call from one of her friends who's a minister at a Presbyterian church. Her name's Joan. And so Terry, my wife Terry, called and said, listen, Joan called and wants you to speak on Palm Sunday. I said, I'll call her back. I said, I'll do it on one condition. You come hear me speak. She's like, why? I said, you've never heard me speak. You've got to come. If I'm going to do this, you got to come hear me speak. And I knew she'd come because Joan's her friend. So we go to this Palm Sunday. Now, Palm Sunday, I don't know about Palm Sunday here. It's a big deal where I'm from. It's a big deal. So we're driving out to beautiful Gastonia, North Carolina. Beautiful little Presbyterian church out in the country. And we pull in, and all of a sudden, I see these doors open, and these seats are going out through the parking lot. It's a big deal. So we go in, I talk to the minister, just like I sort of did today with Todd. I sort of get prepped, right? You gotta get prepped. So all of a sudden, before the church service begins, I'm sitting there with my family, and all of a sudden the processional's coming in. And all of a sudden I hear the hymn coming in. I hear the first chords of the hymn, and I start crying like a baby. The hymn was The Old Rugged Cross. And that was my grandmother's favorite hymn. And I hear it, I am crying like a baby. And my daughter goes, Dad, man up. Just like that, right at my side. Because we don't cry, right? She's like, well, we don't cry, we man up, right? We're there, we're tough. But here I'm crying like a baby. And my wife's looking like, hey, do you cry every time you talk? Are you okay? Are you gonna be able to do it? And my wife's like grilling me right there. I said, I'll be all right, right? Yeah, right. So if it comes my time to talk, the scripture lesson says, it's my time to talk. Now I'm gonna stop here, I'm gonna go back. You see this picture's called God's Hands. Now the first church that I spoke out outside of Charlotte was a place called Oakboro Baptist. This guy kept calling me and said, you gotta come speak, you gotta come speak. And I said, fine, I said, okay, I'll come. So I spoke and I had the pulpit at Oakboro Baptist. The original of this picture was hanging over my head the entire time. Didn't notice it though. I mean, I was focused, right? Didn't notice it. Now, I don't know if you all been to a Baptist church with a minister. When you're done, he grabs your hand and says, we're going to talk to everybody as we leave. So he's pulling me up the aisle, right? And I'm talking to everybody, we're shaking hands. And all of a sudden, this lady comes running up with the original of this picture. She says, listen, I want to give you a gift. I said, you don't have to do that. I'm here because God wants me here. It's my duty to give back to God. He goes, no, she goes, listen, I had a couple friends from Bank of America on that plan, the city exec. Please take this as my gift to you. So I took this. This is the original. I've got the original in my office. The original is matted like this big. It's beautiful, beautiful. But I travel so much I can't take the original, so I took a picture of it. Okay? We're back to Gastonia now. I've got the original of this, and I put it to the right side of where I speak, always. It's always on my right side because I know where it's at, right? So I come up and start speaking. And all of a sudden, 7, 8 minutes into this thing, I look up, and all of a sudden I see these two little boys, 7, 8 years old, start walking down this aisle. Now listen, I was a 7, 8-year-old boy. I'd do anything to get out of church. I go wash my hands, go to the bathroom, have a smoke, anything, right? Get out of church, right? And I said, these guys are out of here. But they weren't. They took a hard right and stood in front of this picture. It was like right here, stood in front of this picture while I'm talking. Now, everybody's looking, right? It's like, what are these boys gonna do? You don't know what these boys are gonna do, right? They could do anything. And one of them interrupted me. One of the boys looked up and said, this is a miracle. And everybody got real quiet. The other boy said, he's a miracle man. Looked at me, turned, walked away, no big deal. I look at my wife, and she is bawling. Because she got it. See, she had to see, why does Dave do what Dave does? See, she could care less on with you guys tonight, but I impacted a youth who now believes there's a Jesus because I was there. And that meant more to my wife than anything. That's why my wife allows me to do what I do, because of that moment truly mattered to our family. A couple years later, I was honored to be asked to speak at our 9/11 services in Charlotte. Honored. That was a great honor. I don't know if they do it here in the Nashville area, but it's a great honor. And it's with your dignitaries and the military and first responders and it's an amazing experience. Now, my minister had only seen me speak inside the church. So I said, hey, Ken, why don't you come out with me to see me? It's going to be a different talk, right? It's going to be about thankfulness, right, and first responders. So I went out, he came out with me to do this thing, right? We get done, and we're walking back to the car. And he looked at me and said, listen, Dave, I want to tell you something. I was listening to you talk. He said, in the Methodist faith, We believe you're only baptized once into the faith. He said, but I was listening to you. It's like you went in the water that day, and when you came out, everything opened up. It's like you were rebaptized. It's like God all of a sudden shone on you. He said, everybody has a ministry. All of you and I have a ministry. He says, your ministry is speaking. Never give up speaking. This is how God is using you. That's why I do what I do. Because he saw something, and I came out of the water, just like all of us. That'll be that moment. I talk about the personal plane crash. Everybody's got that traumatic life experience. All of us. You may not come out of the water physically like I do, but you'll come out of the water whether you have a heart attack, stroke, tornado, hurricane, something. You'll come out of the water, and God will shine on you. Last story I'll share is this. I was asked, I got a phone call out of the blue from Taiwan. They asked if I could do an interview in Taiwan for Radio Free China, trying to get the message of God into China, right? And I was all in, not only because of that, because my cousin was one of those kids who were arrested back at Tiananmen Square for handing out Bibles. She was arrested. So I'm all in. So I do this interview over in Taiwan. And what they did is very cool. They interviewed me in English. They translated it into Mandarin and sent it over, right? Very cool. Didn't think about it for a little while. I'm on the Sunday before Pentecost at our church. Now, that year, in fact, those 3 years, every other Sunday I was speaking at a different church. So, I was home maybe once, twice a month maybe. So we were at church, and all of a sudden, services begin, and Reverend Ken's up there, right, talking. He gets to the scripture lesson, and remember the Sunday before Pentecost, I don't know whether it's big here or not, but it's when Jesus gives the final commandment, right? Final commandment, he tells everybody to go out to Samaria, Judea, and the world, and the Holy Spirit will fill you. He said, and that's what Dave Sanderson is doing. And my daughter said, Dad, are you awake? I said, oh yeah, I'm awake now. Everybody's looking at me. But what he found out is this, and I found out from him. His daughter was in Beijing, going to school. She heard my message in Mandarin and heard me talk about Providence, where I go to church, called her dad, said, you got somebody over here talking about your church in here. And that's when I realized this is what we're all about. It's about that final commandment, right? God, if you go out and do what you're supposed to do, that final commission, the Holy Spirit will fill you. And that's why I do what I do, because I think that's what happened. He gave me the commandment. I had to step up. Now I've gone to over 10 different countries doing this because God gave me that commandment. He gives us all that commandment. It's fighting the good fight. So that's what, if you go back, think about this. Go back to 2009 in your mind. There wasn't a lot of positive things happening in the country, but all of a sudden, you had a crew and passengers that did something that had never been done in the history of aviation. One team, one goal, one miracle. And it gave people hope. There's a passage in the Bible that says suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint us. That's what only happened that day. That's what I get to do every single day now. And that's what our call right is for all of us men to do this. Go out and give people hope. This is why we're here. How can we go out and give people hope? This is what you're all about right now. It's all about going out and giving people hope. This is what our call is. Go out with the Great Commission. Give people hope. I want to end up with this. God gives you secrets, right? When you go through something like this, and everybody goes through something, God lets secrets in your head. Sometimes they don't come out for a while. But I want to sort of give you some of those secrets, some of the things I learned through this experience that God opened up in my mind, and now hopefully you can take away tonight, and you can impact somebody else's life with some of them. First thing is this: process saves lives. It may not be your physical life, it might be your spiritual life. See, one thing I learned about this is this: you have to be intentional with your faith. You have to step up and do it. You can't wait for somebody else to do it for you. You have to have a process for being intentional with your faith, or your faith will not exist. Process saves lives. Second, casualness leads to casualties. You can't be casual with relationships, guys. You got to be intentional. Once again, you can't be casual, because if you're casual with your faith, casual with your relationships, people go away. You got to stay on it. You got to be focused. You got to be serious about relationships, because that's what God wants you to do. He wants you to bring people to the faith. Do not be casual, or casualties can happen. People value people. Let's look at Jesus in the human form, not the spiritual form, the human form. What did Jesus value most on earth? Relationships with people. It says in the Bible. Jesus didn't hang out with the cool kids. Jesus hung out with everybody, right? He valued people. People of value people. Be somebody of value. Value somebody else's life. That's part of the problem in this country now. We don't value life enough. Jesus wants us to value life. People of value people. The power of teamwork. How do 155 people who do not know each other or care about each other do something in less than 6 minutes that had never been done in history? Because two things. Number one, you check your ego at the door. God wants you to check your ego at the door, right? Ego, edging God out. He wants you to check your ego at the door and step up. You know, when you're going down in a plane crash, guys, I'm gonna give you a secret. I don't care if you're the CEO of the biggest company in the country, ExxonMobil, or you're the guy who's cleaning the toilets at midnight. Everybody's the same. Nobody's any better than anybody else. You check your ego at the door. And when given the opportunity to lead, you lead. That's what happens. That's what happened that day. I had the opportunity in 1999 to escort a guy by the name of General Norman Schwarzkopf. Have you ever know Schwarzkopf? Ever heard of him? You ever been around a 4-star general? Very intimidating. But I had the opportunity to talk to him. And one of the things he shared with me is this, is when you're given the opportunity to lead, you step up and lead. God gives you that strength. You gotta lead. It's your personal leadership skills. That's why I teach personal leadership skills and servant leadership. It's the power of teamwork, coming together. And just look at Jesus. Jesus always hung out with a team. He has disciples, right? He always had somebody with him. He wants you to be around a team. He wants you to lead a team. And last but not least, grace is fueled by gratitude. What is gratitude? It's giving thanks to God. About once or twice every month, I get a question. Hey, Dave, do you really think this is a miracle? I said, well, I don't know. I tell people, I don't know, but one thing I do know is this. There's a lot of things that men can't accomplish, but with God, all things can be accomplished. And what is a miracle? It's given from God. You get more grace by more gratitude. That's why every day I pray for grace, pray for wisdom, pray for all these things, because I want that moment, I want to have so much grace that when something happens, I'm there. God's going to use me in the way he needs to use me. Grace is fueled by gratitude. I want to say thank you for having me tonight. My goal is to make sure I can connect with each one of you tonight. And there's a way that I can do this now. I use technology. And I have to use technology because my goal is to make sure every group I'm with, I can touch everybody. And one of the things that I figured out is this, every day I put out new content on servant leadership, how to be a servant leader in your life on LinkedIn. So anybody here got LinkedIn? Anybody got LinkedIn? I want to show you a secret on LinkedIn, and you could do me a favor. This way I can stay in contact with you. It'll be very easy. I'm going to do something you've never heard before in a meeting. Get your phones out and turn them on, all right? If you got LinkedIn, open up your LinkedIn. I'll make this very easy for you. You open up your LinkedIn. If you go to the bottom on your LinkedIn, you see two little people. I'm going to show you a little secret if I can sign in the correct way. Hold on here. I just signed out. So you go to the little bottom at the bottom. As soon as I sign back in, you'll see, and you go click that, and you open up, it says Find Nearby. Turn that on. Once you turn that on, you'll be able to be connected to everybody in this room who's got LinkedIn. You'll be immediately friends with them. So let me just do that real quick, because I want to make sure that I can stay in contact with you. So if there's anything I can do to help you, or if I can send you any content, that's my goal, to help you become a better servant leader. So give me a second here, and we'll do it. I can't believe I just... Okay, cool. All right. That's number one. Please connect with me on LinkedIn on that. Second is this. I brought some books tonight. Now, I'm not here to sell books, but I'm going to ask for a donation tonight, because one of the goals is to always leave behind a contribution where I go. I hope you have that same feeling. You want to give back. So I'm going to be out there with my books tonight. If you give a $20 donation, we're going to give all the net profits to keep it here locally to the Red Cross. So when you have a flood, a fire or something, the Red Cross has the things they need, or for you or your family if something happens. So I would love for you to connect with me out back when you leave. Just to leave, nothing else, just say hello to me. I want to connect with everybody here. It's that important for me to say thank you for what you're doing, stepping up and being a man and manning up. Like my daughter said, Dad, man up. I'll leave you with this. There was a group of people for 1,000 years that lived in the land of not enough. But all of a sudden, God chose a leader, sent him into that land, and took him out of that land to a land of just enough. And for 40 years, they were in this land until God found leaders. God found people who were servant leadership mindset and moved them from a land of just enough to a land of more than enough. My wish for you is this. You come out of here tonight, you become one of those leaders for God. You take your family, you take your team, you take your businesses from a land of just enough, step up and be a servant leader like God asked you to do, like God did those many years ago, and move them from a land of just enough to a land of more than enough. God wants us all to have more than enough. When I say God bless you, may God bless Long Hollow Baptist. I am honored to be here tonight. But most importantly, right now, may God bless the United States. We need a lot of help in this country, and the only way it's going to happen is for men like us to step up, believe in God, and get this message out. So when stuff starts hitting the fan, God knows he has an army out there to help him execute his plan. God bless you guys. Thank you very much.